roulette, the best a man can get.
All's right with the world. We are all back. Coach is here. Things are falling into place. Eric Mangini, thanks for being with us this morning.
Coach, good to see you, man. Great look there. Tie, pocket square.
Thanks. I've been working on it.
Working on the look.
Yeah.
Coach, let's get into the biggest story over the weekend. Andrew Luck. Luck retired from the NFL Saturday night. I hope you heard. Otherwise, this is going to be an awkward segment. He walks away from the game at 29 years old after 7 seasons in the league and arguably is one of the most talented quarterbacks to ever play the position. Take a listen to what Luck said led to his decision.
I feel quite exhausted and quite tired. I do know once I hit the sort of point where I felt like I knew what I needed to do for myself and talked to Nicole and some, my folks and some close friends and family and then had some very difficult conversations with Mr. Irsay, Frank and Chris, but it did feel like in a sense a weight was lifted then, but it's been tiring. I feel tired, and not just in the physical sense.
Were you surprised, Coach, by the decision? Shocked, even?
Yeah, definitely. I was out to dinner, and a friend of mine got the news, and I didn't believe what he was saying when he initially said it. But you hear in Andrew's voice how tired he is and how long a process this has been. And when you even look at this most recent injury, it starts in March, and then he's going to be ready for OTAs, and then he's going to be ready for training camp, and they don't really know what it is. It's the ankle, it's the calf, it's all these things. I'm sure after the experience that he had the last time,
the shoulder
going through this again, and the idea of trying to get through the 16-game regular season where he's being put together just to get to Sunday, I'm sure for him was just too much to look at. And there are a lot of thoughtful guys in the league, and things have changed, I think, especially in the last 5 years with CTE and the things we're learning, where guys are making different decisions. And Andrew Luck has a lot of options in his life, and I'm sure he's looking at it as, I want to be able to play with my kids. I want to be able to live a full life physically, and not go through pain day in and day out, and he made it a really hard decision.
Yeah, a number of things have changed. The concussion lawsuits, the #1 thing that changed athletes, especially the ones in the NFL, and their perspective moving forward. And the other thing has been the economics. Because the economics are so strong and guys can make so much money, then you don't have to say, do I stay out here, and I don't have to. So those two things have changed the psyche of NFL players. But to me, everyone does not have a body nor a brain for the NFL. Now, I love football. I love the physical contact. When I was 7 years old, me and my cousin tried to doctor up my birth certificate and took it to the Parks and Recreation to try to get me to play, and the league was 8. You had to be 8 years old. And the lady told me, get my parents and either come back. And I said, oh, okay, I'll be back. I was back 365 days later to finally be able to play. And in the NFL, I played in 3 different decades. I had the body and the mentality for it. Ultimately, there were times along the way I wanted to quit. One time that brings to my memory, the most significant was Buddy Ryan. I had been starting there 2 years. And then Buddy Ryan had me in the doghouse, and I pulled my hamstring in training camp. And in training camp, I couldn't practice with the team, so they had me off on the side. Practice had me running hills. They had me pushing one of the golf carts up the hill with a fat trainer on it. Like, they were trying to make me quit, and I was getting ready to quit. And I had stopped using at the time for over 4 months, and the organization didn't believe in me. I wanted to quit, but my pride and I couldn't just give up. But I could understand why guys do it. I've seen guys in training camp all the time. Down at meal check. They don't check that to make sure everyone ate. They make sure that everyone come down and want to play football. So Andrew Luck, I can understand and respect what his body has been through, and I expect this generation of football players to be smarter than my predecessors, to be smarter than us, because they have better options and they have more information. I'm at the Hall of Fame. I see guys walking around. I've seen guys who have lost their ability, cognitive skills and everything at young ages. So, man, I got nothing but respect for someone that's played that game and take the beating that he took. Because the one thing that was criminal was that offensive line they put in front of Andrew Luck. That's what forced us to this press conference this weekend, what happened to him several years ago, Nick.
Yeah, and the most hits taken per game by any quarterback by far from 2012 to 17, which leads you up until that's the year he missed, was Andrew Luck. And the other guys are either out of the league or they are middling performers in the league. We know that it wasn't, yes, we know of the shoulder, we now know of the calf, but it was also a lacerated kidney. It was cracked ribs. It was one concussion early in his career. So he had, when we didn't know it, when guys like me were criticizing him for not fulfilling the potential, he was playing injured. He was playing hurt. And I know some of that was his, wanting to make the big play and always trying to extend the plays, things we've talked about. So some of it he did to himself, but a lot of it Ryan Grigson did to him. A lot of it, bad team building, trading a first-round pick for Trent Richardson, not drafting offensive linemen, picking the wrong guys. Like, those things we saw, I don't know what David Carr's career would have been. I know what it was. If I'm a Houston Texans fan today, I'm waving this in front of Bill O'Brien and the organization saying, don't let Deshaun Watson have this happen to him.
Yeah, he had to catch a bus to a game last year.
Absolutely.
With a punctured lung.
Right, he couldn't fly. And I don't mean to laugh, but I mean, it was that absurd. What is so, though, shocking is it wasn't that Andrew, to me, not what I was hearing from him, it wasn't that he was yet worried, and maybe you should never get to the point where you're worried about his cognitive abilities moving forward. It wasn't, will I be able to walk with my kids? It was the process of rehabilitation of a calf injury where he said, I've essentially been on this treadmill for 4 years, and I thought it was ending. I thought last year when I played healthy and played great, finally I'm going to get to a place where it's not pain, injury, rehab. It's playing football, practicing football. And now this damn calf injury's lingered for 5 months. And he said, I'm choosing me. And I find it so fascinating that for a player who has been as dedicated, as available as far as wanting to be available throughout his career, as Andrew Luck, at that position, that what choosing him means is stopping the thing that has made him who he is. And we've never seen it. We've seen guys walk away when they had already accomplished what they said they were going to. Luck is doing it before ever scratching the surface of what we all thought he would do and what he showed he had the ability to do.
Well, look, it's a long life, and he's 29 years old, and even though it may not have been cognitive at this point, being on that treadmill of being injured and rehabbing, that's probably not going to change. That's the reality of football, is that there are going to be a lot of injuries that you're going to have to deal with, and pain that you're going to have to work through, and long-term effects as you get older. And we all know as we get older, things creak a little bit more. They don't, it gets harder, and those things pile up. I remember in San Francisco when Chris Borland retired, and a little different level of player, but he was a young, really successful, emerging defensive player who said, okay, I've looked at this, and I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to take this risk anymore. And this is probably going to be more common than not. And we aren't going to be as shocked in the future when this happens, because to Chris's point, the money's different. So there is a level of security that comes with some of these contracts, to where now you can take a step back and say, okay, how many Rolexes do I need? How many giant houses do I need? How many of those things do I need? And say, I'm going to choose to take a healthier approach to this.
How much changes now with the direction that this team moves in? Because Nick played out the timeline. August 1st, he tells Jim Irsay, right?
No, it told Peter King August 4th, I'm going to be there week 1. And August 19th, he tells the owner I'm retiring.
So it's not a ton of time for the organization to get Jacoby Brissett up and running, but how much changes if you're the head coach of a team where you had one plan, where your team is in conversation for Super Bowl talk, and now you're in a completely different direction? How much has to get changed and how quickly?
Well, this is a unique situation because he hasn't played. So it's been Jacoby Brissett's team, and there is the value of Jacoby having a whole season as a starter. So through OTAs, through training camp, it's been Brissett's, the operation's been all with Brissett. So you've got that body of work that you can build on in terms of approach and how dramatically you're going to have to change the system. It's pretty dramatic because you've got to make things work for Jacoby. You've got to give Jacoby everything that he needs to be successful. And there's a big part of that playbook that was Andrew Luck. The majority of it is what does Andrew like? Now that has to go away, and it's what does Jacoby like? And a point that you made earlier just about the young part of Andrew Luck's career, I think this is always the debate that we have about whether you should play a rookie or not play a rookie, because they don't know how to protect themselves all the time. So even a guy like Kyler Murray behind an offensive line that's struggling, he's young and he's going to take chances because he's young. That's going to lead to certain hits, and this may be a topic for a later time, but it's that maturing process for those young quarterbacks that's part of this whole discussion and why we got here as well.
They haven't been able to do a full offseason study. This offseason, you know what they studied? How well an offensive line was, how can I add a running, how can we help that defense? Now they don't have that opportunity, because they're a new quarterback. They have a lot of confidence in him, but they didn't get a chance to be able to break down everything because he didn't play much last year. So now how do they go back to 17, find the things that work for them? So for me, there's going to be an extended training camp, 4 to 6 weeks, finding out what Jacoby likes, what he wants to do best, how to get the team around that as far as the offensive line and running attack before they move forward. I still believe that they are a playoff team because this is a talented roster. If that defensive front can come up and be more consistent with their linebackers and their secondary that I believe is underrated and will be better this season, yeah, this is a legitimate playoff team.
I'm sure Andrew Luck is waking up this morning going, wait, what happened this weekend? I did what? He's got to live with it now. Coach, stick around. Coming up, are the Steelers better set up for success without Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell? We'll talk some Steelers next on First Things First.
And if people are asking, Coach's answer on how many Rolex...